I brought a brief sutra reading to share with you today. It's a partial sutra, not the whole thing, just 4 verses, because that's what we have time for. And it's a little bit abstruse, a little bit hard to take in, but tantalizing all the same. It comes from what's called the Chinese Dharmapada. It is chapter 36 in the Chinese Dharmapada, which interestingly enough is not included in the Pali Dhammapada. However, the material is somewhat alluded to in a different sutra in the Pali Canon. So this translation was done by our teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. In 2014 it was published. In Vietnamese, he translated it from Chinese into Vietnamese. And then several years ago, I think it's 2024, Sister Annabelle Lady translated the sutra into English. If you want to read it yourself, it comes in a book that's called Enjoying the Ultimate by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he tells us that he got this concept from a lay Vietnamese Zen master of the 13th century, Tuệ Trung Tuong Si, who, having realized nirvana, wrote a poem about enjoying roaming freely in the ultimate dimension. So this is just chapters 8 through verses 8 through 11, excuse me. Verse 8. The mind is difficult to see, but habit energies can be recognized. The one who can recognize their mind of desire will be able to see everything clearly. When there is no object of desire, it is possible to avoid all kinds of suffering. Infatuation always makes suffering increase. Verse 9. A clear, untainted, and pure mind can master desire. At that point, you no longer have to come in touch with the world of suffering. Even though your eyes still see, your ears still hear, your memory still remembers, and your consciousness still discriminates. Verse 10. Having realized non-attachment and non-discrimination, once you let go of all ideas, you can enter this realm. You will transcend the perception of the self, master all mental formations that cause suffering, and wholly eliminate the habit of discriminatory perception, so there will be no more suffering. Verse 11. In a disruptive environment, when you can keep your mind silent, you will remain still. When the mind is disturbed, you cannot be close to nirvana. You cannot have peace and joy. When ideas about suffering and happiness have been transcended, then there is the true silence. When ideas about the true silence have been transcended, there is no more need for coming and going. The title of this brief talk today is called Simple Things, and I took it directly from a practice song, one that I learned from a member of my local Sangha who had spent 3 months at the Rains Retreat at Plum Village last year. And the song is called Simple Things. So I'm going to sing it for you. I'm going to post the words in the chat in case you want to follow along. It's not long. I'll just do it through one time, and then we'll move on. I get my joy from the simple things coming from the earth. I get my joy from the sun that shines and the water speaks to me. Listen to the wind and listen to the water. Hear what they say. Sing hey-ya, 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 hey. Sing hey-ya, 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 hey. We'll do that again in a few more minutes. But I really wanted to share that with you because this is one of those things in life that always brings me joy. Something about hearing this tune reconnects me in a way that few other things do with the joy in life, even in the midst of terrible turmoil. The subtitle was Reclaiming Well-Being in the Midst of Confusion. And I picked that title before my head of state kidnapped the leader of another country. It was before my head of state threatened to invade an ally's land and take it. It was before my head of state decided to close the Kennedy Center because no one will perform there any longer. Or few will, I should say. I chose that title before 2 people were killed in Minneapolis, exercising their free right of protest. And I chose this title before the head of state posted disparaging videos of someone, another world leader, in a position of power that were racist and disparaging. So I've come to the conclusion that my title's a little bit soft. So if you want to read in there, Reclaiming Well-Being from Chaos, I won't argue with you. There is one thing I want to say right off the bat, though, and that is that it's important when we talk about simple things to realize in the Buddhist tradition we are not talking about a duality of simple and complex, of simple being good and complex being bad. As a matter of fact, both simple and complex can be both good and bad. But I chose this title because I was feeling particularly overwhelmed by the complexity of the problems that are facing us these days. I actually have 2 perfect examples of bad complexity and good complexity. I was thinking about how the last 2 years, every time I get on the computer, there's always something that goes wrong, and there's no human to talk to figure out what it is. So I spend hours and hours of my days figuring out how to solve these problems. And in one sense, it's really very enjoyable. It pulls in my concentration and attracts me deeply to track down and solve a computer problem. But it's very different from the life I was living before now. Something's changed. I now spend many, many more hours of my life, my precious lifetime, sorting out problems on computers. And there's something not quite right about that. The other form of complexity that I absolutely adore is how complex our minds can be. And I'm not one who says that thinking is a bad thing. I love minds. I love both their thinking and their non-thinking aspects. One of my greatest pleasures is studying plants. And it can be overwhelming, the complexity of the plant life in the world. I'm particularly interested in spermatophytes, which are called seed plants. Any form of plant that forms from a seed. There are 460 different families of seed plants that have been identified so far in this world. And spermatophytes aren't even the biggest category of plants. There are thousands of species of plants, billions of individual organisms that are plants. It can be overwhelming to to contemplate the huge size of this. I remember reading a Tibetan teacher who said, for one of the Brahma Viharas, which is called equanimity, he called it instead multiplicity. Our teacher often reads inclusivity when we talk about equanimity. So complexity is not a bad thing, but it's important to know when we need to take a break from it. So that's what the simple things were. I needed a break from what's going on in my world, a time to remember and really cherish the good things that are happening, as well as facing the bad things that are going on. So what we live in is samsara. This is the human historical context in which we all exist. Sometimes it goes better for us individually and nationally. Sometimes it goes worse. It's amazing how we're witnessing in intimate detail right now, through the efforts of journalists of many different persuasions and points of view, the self-destruction of an individual who happens to be a world leader. I'll let you fill in the name and identity with whatever world leader comes to your mind. There are many from your own life experience. These folks sometimes seem trapped in samsara. They just can't seem to stop themselves from acting out harmful patterns of behavior. Harsh speech, physical violence, over and over again. Yet these leaders also speak to something that's very real and very deep in the humanity of all of us. As a human being myself, it's a deep part of me as well. I have moments when I can't repress harsh speech. I have moments, much more rarely, of feeling inclined to physical violence, though I usually am able to control them. In whatever future we may have as individuals and as nations, history, however imperfect and biased it may be written, is recording, even as we speak, what is happening in our collective communities today. So we could be asking ourselves every morning after we have our usual consumption of our breakfast news, if these qualities of our humanity, harsh speech and physical violence, are the patterns that we choose to act out in our own lives and in the lives of the nations of which we are a part. Are these the seeds we choose to water? Or will we practice every day in big or small ways, whatever ways manifest in our own life experience, watering the seeds of joy, peace, compassion, and sanity? So for me, the simple things come in when I feel overwhelmed by the massive nature of life, the burgeoning hugeness of it, and the fact that I control very little bit of the space. And so at those moments, I'm having to learn through the practice how to rest. I remember when I first started studying Buddhism, I was in a different tradition. And it wasn't until I came to the Plum Village tradition that it was actually preached, so to speak. It was actually taught. It's a good thing to rest. I'd never heard that in my life, in the whole 50 years of my life before then. It's a good thing to rest. It's really important that we have ways that we know work for us, and they won't be the same for everybody. Because again, we're tremendously diverse. But discovering the ways that each of us can find that place of peace is what we're here for. Not just to deal with the problems, but we're here to nourish ourselves, to take care of ourselves so we can handle the problems. For me, this is a daily walk. I walk I walk about 4 miles a day, a little less than 4 miles, and it takes me a little longer than an hour. Every day, it's the same route. I do 4 laps, the same territory. I've been doing this for 5 years. And I made a commitment early on that this would be the time when I cultivate something that I was not taught to cultivate in any other spiritual practice I had before this one, to cultivate a sense of happiness and joy in the time that I'm here on this earth. Which is not to say it's all going to be great, because there's going to be plenty of suffering out there. But to actually be encouraged to cultivate that happiness without considering myself to be selfish or greedy has been a major lifelong process. On my walk, been doing it about 5 years. I know about 20 different cats on my walk, because I go very early in the morning. There usually are very few humans out that early except me. And I remember there was one day when I started a cat fight in the street by bringing some food to share with a cat. And that was very shocking to me. I did not want to cause a fight. I felt so full of love and giving, and I'm sharing food, and all of a sudden there's this biting and scratching and hissing going on. So it really kind of woke me up. And I realized, well, there are things I can do that can make this happen differently. So what I ended up doing was I turned around. I do the same route 4 laps a day, but I turned around and went the other direction, so that the more aggressive cats are second. I reach them secondly, and I reach the gentler cats first. And it prevents fights. Just a little tidbit of something that I learned by being observant and mindful. And today, most days, I take a little treat in my pouch to feed one of my favorite cats on the route. One of the best moments of my day. So it's really important that each of us find what works for us. What can we think, say, or do that will water the seeds of joy when we are managing, whether we like it or not, whether we deny it or not, a world that's overwhelming in its complexity. Find your simple thing. If you can, find a bunch of simple things that work for you and don't harm others to enhance the joy in your life. We will need that. The sorrow will come without our bidding it. There will be plenty of tough times. What we can do is practice remembering and focusing our gentle yet mindful efforts on bidding the joy we feel we may be lacking to come back into our lives, back into our moments, our present moments. So I'm going to sing the song again, and you can follow along, and we'll move on from there. I get my joy from the simple things coming from the earth. I get my joy from the sun that shines and the water speaks to me. Listen to the wind and listen to the water. Hear what they say. Sigi hey-ya, 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 hey. Sigi hey-ya, hey-ya, hey-ya.